Welcome to Lost in Translation, episode 14 with Bobby Martin. I'm Sam Perkins. Today we're joined with a super impressive guy. I can't say young man because we're all old, but Chris Bruff. Chris played Division I hoops at the University of Maine. I've never seen a fat man jump so high at that level before in my life.
Or since. I am certainly now.
I'm joking, but Chris is a really interesting and I think really remarkable story. He's from Connecticut, outside of Hartford, from Bloomfield, went to the University of Maine, really didn't play much his first 2 years, really. He just buried on the depth chart there. Gets some playing time as junior. Senior year is monster, and then goes on to become a teacher. And has been teaching for a very long time now. And I think the world of teachers. I was a teacher for the better part of a decade, and I'm no longer teaching. And Chris has stuck it out through everything, COVID, everything going on. And I feel like, it's really important to acknowledge teachers and to give. I'm just so happy that we have a teacher that can come on here and talk, because I just think there's so many misconceptions and would love to get the perspective and the added perspective of Chris being both black and male, which, statistically there aren't nearly enough black teachers in our country, and there aren't nearly enough black male teachers in our country, I think. So Chris, I'm just really happy to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Obviously, I've known you for years. Did get a little playing time as a sophomore. Started a few games. Didn't play a lot, but yeah, college was fun.
Yeah. You played for Giannini your first 2 years?
First year.
Oh, first year.
I had Ted Woodward for sophomore, junior, senior year. So
Dr. John.
Bobby knows G. What was it like playing for John Giannini? For those who don't know, by the way, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Giannini has the exact same voice as Artie Funkhauser. But what was that like? Because he is an interesting guy.
It was different. Let me tell you that. It was very different. Being recruited by one person and then seeing them as a coach is very different.
Yes, it is.
That's part of my advice. As a coach, I also coached as well to
That's
Lexington
right.
High,
Yep.
the freshman team, and all the guys, that they go up, as soon as they, start getting letters, as soon as they start doing whatever, I've always told them, come reach out to me. I have lots of advice to give you, things that some people might not share with you, and that is one thing that I wish someone had told me before, especially before you commit. They talk to you, they said,
Yep.
They give you all the good stuff. I got good advice on that, but I wish someone had just said, ask to watch a practice. Go to a game.
You didn't see a practice.
I did not see a practice. I committed early, and go to a practice.
Yeah, it's
right. Go watch them. Ask them if you can go into the locker room during one of the games, if you could. I know it's not always possible, but if it is, just go in and see that, because it's different.
Yeah, you really want to see coaches in their natural habitat when they're not putting on their best possible front.
I will say what I really appreciate about Coach G was that he really stuck to his thing, right? Like his big thing was, you got to win the defensive glass. I don't care who you are. Everyone's got a defensive rebound. I appreciated that. It's a good, solid principle. His other big thing was, the ball's got to go in before we get a shot up. Now, basketball's not played that way very much anymore.
Yeah.
But at the time, that was pretty typical. Feed the big man in the post, and then make sure there's some play action. Make sure you're moving. And then, just from watching old school Maine, that's what you'll see. The ball always goes in. The ball gets kicked out. Run this whole secondary offense. It's like that run the ball down your throat, like the way the Giants used to play, right? Like what you're gonna get. You're gonna get a team that's almost there, right? You're gonna get a team that's gonna win some of those games that are tough. You might beat one of the best teams once or twice. You'll definitely beat the crappy teams. But that's what it was like.
The ball's not coming out nearly as much when it goes to Mark Flavin.
No, especially not when it gets swung that way. No. I mean, and think about it. If the ball got kicked out, it's not going back in. If your rule is throw the ball in first, the ball's not going back.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
Bobby coached Flav for a while in the summers, and
yeah.
He's not known for his passing.
No. He was, he was interesting as a player, because I'd never seen a big guy like that not be able to jump. Shots fired.
Yeah.
Wow.
He'll tell you.
Hey,
Blaze Burt was like 13 inches.
I know.
It was sad.
I have his like one college dunk on film too, which is pretty amazing because I think he only had one of them.
Yeah, he would dunk.
Yeah.
Sometimes in practice, you'd rag on him. He'd get up and he'd dunk and whatever. He was hilarious though.
Yeah.
He was hilarious, yeah.
So how did you wind up at Maine? From well, let's take it back. Actually, let me rewind that. Tell me about growing up in Bloomfield, Connecticut. What was life like? What were you like? Why basketball? I mean, you're big, but you're 6'3" is not 6'4", 6'2", whatever.
Yeah.
They list you at something
program
that's
height,
somewhere
6'3" and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're not taller than 6'3" and a half
No.
if that's your program.
No,
height.
I mean with lifts in my shoes for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so if that's for a normal human being, like, hey, it's a big guy, but that's not like, oh my god, basketball player size. So how does that?
In real life, right? Like I'm argument's sake 6'2", right? 6'1" and 3/4. You round up to 6'2" there. I'm big. I'm taller than most people, right? Like I have broad shoulders.
Yeah.
And back in the day, I could jump really high. I was very athletic, very quick, good hands.
What was your vert?
36.
Ooh.
Dude, you have no idea.
Ooh.
This was a 6'2" shoes, like power forward, who the dunk. I don't mean to get sidetracked, but Harvard 7'1" Brian Cushworth. You came up, put back. He came over 7'1", caught it, cocked it back, and banged it and the dude was in between him and the hoop like this, and it was one of the best dunks I have ever seen.
I'm not sure what era this was, but this sounds like William Herndon from UMass.
UMass. That's exactly. Yep,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh. That's
Like
scary
Chris
now.
was.
Yeah.
He was.
Okay.
He was the America East version of Charles Barkley. Like that's who he was.
Much respect. Much respect.
Appreciate that. So for me, if you go all the way back, both my parents are from Jamaica, and in the Hartford community, pretty much most of the black people that you run into are from some island. Like, you would expect to hear patois everywhere you go. Most of the stores are that way now. Growing up, there'd be a bunch of Jamaican bakeries in different places. You kind of had to go into Hartford to get it. But originally, my grandmother's brother, so great uncle, had come in as a farm worker. One by one, once he got his green card and got his citizenship, he started applying to get his sisters in and his brothers in. My grandmother was the first one to get in, so then she started to file for all her kids to come in. So eventually she came, my mom came, and then my dad, and then they had a family here in Connecticut. So it was like I would say very, very close-knit family. My mom's got, 6 siblings that live up in the area, a ton of cousins, right? So, when it came to having like a close-knit family, that was it. You expect on Saturday, once we go out to play sports, after that you go to a aunt's or uncle's house, you just walk on the door, right? You grab whatever's in the fridge and just kind of go after it. But my parents were, especially my dad, was very into soccer. And I don't know if you've ever played soccer, but there's a lot of running in soccer.
Yeah, there really is.
It's cold during the fall when you play soccer.
That's why I wasn't interested in soccer.
Right? If you have allergies, you don't want to be playing soccer.
Right.
So for me, it was an easy one to kind of give up. Didn't really like my coach that much in high school for soccer. I played baseball, loved that, but basketball was just a lot more fun. I actually didn't start playing organized till like 4th grade.
Wow.
But had an older brother who beat me all the time. Every kid in the neighborhood was older than me. So it made, when you talk about like me jumping, me playing, and being tough, there was no choice, right? There was either you get made fun of by your brother, you either lose to your brother and all his friends, or you have to like practice and hopefully beat them one day, right? So that was always my thing. I also got really fortunate with coaches. A lot of the coaches that I grew up with, especially in soccer, a lot of them played for different national teams in the Caribbean. A lot of my coaches here in the States that were from here either played college for sure. They all played, some got some tea in the pros. So I was really, really fortunate to always have good coaching. And then when I made it to my high school, I got really lucky. As I came in as a freshman, I always tell the story to my players. When I came in as a freshman, my brother told me I should try out for the varsity team. He went to Avon Old Farms, so he didn't go to my high school, and I was like, all right, yeah, my brother won't know. Like, I just lied. I was like, yeah, I tried out for the team. But I'm like, I'm not going to try out. This team's amazing, right? But I told him, I was like, yeah, I tried out. they have the tryouts. I get put on the JV squad, and one of the varsity players decides that, for whatever reason, he's going to transfer out. He ends up going to New Britain High, ended up at Siena. So he's a tough player, right? But he left. Another kid quits the team. He's like 6'7". He wants to become a DJ. Okay. Another kid entered some wager, I think, with his dad, and because he didn't follow up with the wager, he didn't get whatever it was, he couldn't play for a few weeks. Something with grades, right? So there's 3 guys now, right? A senior sprains his ankle in the first week of when they're scrimmaging.
Yeah.
Right. Another senior sprains his ankle again in the first game. 5 dudes go down, right? And that's my freshman year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, it's my chance, and my varsity coach, Coach Marabella, was like, "Hey, this is an opportunity. Most kids don't get this.
Yeah.
Like you do. Like, what are you gonna do with it?" I was like, "Man, I'm gonna play." So now all of a sudden, I'm a freshman in the first game of the year. We're playing against Bloomfield High, my town that I don't go to the high school, but I'm playing there. I have no fear. I'm like, why not? Let me just go after it. Like, these are the kids that are my brother's friends. Like, screw these kids. I'm gonna go at them, right? End up scoring like 5 points in the game. I'm playing okay. We play the next game at Trinity College against Marianapolis Prep, and they're tough.
Mm-hmm.
I get my first dunk in the game. I'm hyped.
As a
loving
freshman?
it. Yeah.
Nice.
Right? Right? Yeah, you know that feeling, right? You break it down the court. I had to steal. They went, we're in a 2-3 zone. They threw it over the top. Hit it out to half court. 2 dribbles, rose up, and dunked it. Right?
Nice.
Loved it. But, to me, I was like, I don't have a choice, right? Like, playing with all these older guys, that was like the neighborhood, right? It was like what I told you about growing up with my brother. I played varsity soccer that year and almost led the team in scoring. So, for me, it was always play from behind. You're always the small guy. You're always the young guy. You're not the guy who people are expecting. So, anyways, we won the states that year. I was like the second, 7th player to play. And then after that, it was like, I'm going to play. I have no choice. I have to play. We ended up, I didn't play much. My coach, I don't know for what, I respect his decision. When we made it to the state finals, he had told me after the game, he's like, we always play the seniors in the state final game. So here I am, the ball would go out of bounds, right? At any point in the first quarter. Me and this other kid, Kamani, would come off the bench, and that was it. We never came out of the game. Right? The ball goes out of bounds. I'm waiting. I'm like, Coach, am I going? Am I going to play? Right? And I played less than 2 minutes in the entire game. We won.
Wow.
But I was disappointed. I literally untied my shoelaces. Everyone's celebrating. I was like, I need to be back here. I have to come back and play. I need to play.
That still goes on. That type of coaching still goes on. Coaches, will you please stop that bullshit? Put the kid in. He can play. Come on.
Sophomore year, we played the same team in the finals, Trinity Catholic, right? And we lose to them in the semifinals, right? So now I'm like, dude, will I get back there? So that summer, me and a bunch of dudes, we'd graduated 4 seniors who'd led the state every game and scoring, right? So no one's counting on us to be any good. All of a sudden, I'm like, all right, can we commit? Can we do this? We worked out all summer. Dudes came back in great shape. We ended up winning the states that year. I'm like, I will be the best player on the court. And then same thing with senior year. I was like, well, I can't lose now. Running my mouth to all the guys in my AAU team. I'm not losing now. So, for me, that's kind of the basketball thing, right? Never back down. Always find a way to play.
Wow. So, I know that you put up numbers in high school, and I'd heard about that. But basketball, it's changed a little bit now. Well, it's changed a lot now at the NBA level, where it's more positionless. It's less how big are you. It's what you can do. But for a really long time, basketball was you need to look the part to get, we need our centers to be 7-footers. We need our power forwards to be 6'10". We need our, you're a 6'2", in high school. I'm sure you played, you could be guard, play the 1 through the 5 in high school, would be my guess. But when you look at what translates to the next level, you weren't a big time shooter. So being a 1 or a 2, you really, when all was said and done, you were really a monster of a 4-man, but 6'2". Mm-hmm. How hard was it to get recruited? Was that working against you because you didn't necessarily have a like position at the next level, that you were kind of a positionless player before it was really in vogue to have those guys?
So I think that what's really tough is, like, a lot of players, especially when they're getting recruited, you just don't. It's really hard to compare your talent. So, like, when I was getting recruited, a lot of people were like, all right, with your height, you need to be a point guard.
Yep.
I was like, all right, well, I don't have the point guard ball handling.
Yeah.
Like, I can guard them,
Yep.
but I can't handle the ball like that. I also didn't shoot it, like you said.
Yeah.
But I shot a whole lot more in high school than I did in college. Not because of, like, I didn't feel like I could make that shot, but just what I heard.
Yeah.
Right? When coach is like, you don't shoot it like Kevin. Right? Well, yeah, no shit, I don't shoot like Kevin.
Yeah.
Like, Kev didn't even hit the rim.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Kevin Reed was an incredible shooter.
Right? Like, all right, you're comparing me to the best shooter in school history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every time he's open, I'm going to hit him. Right?
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to set a screen so he can get open. Right? Like, that's the way I looked at basketball. So, like, I didn't take a lot of threes in college. One, because, like, I didn't really need to either.
Yeah.
If I needed to, yeah. Also, had never got the gas to be like, oh, you should do this. Coaches were always like, you got to put in the work. I'm like, well, like, you see me play during individuals. I kick that kid's ass.
Yeah.
Like, I'm knocking down shots all the time. You watch us play pickup. You see me knocking these shots down all the time.
Yeah.
Right? You see me do it in practice, and then guys will be like, why don't you do it in the game? I'm like, well, because he says if I miss this, I'm coming out. Why would I shoot it?
No pressure.
Why would I even bother? I'm like, I'm trying to play. So there's a little bit of that. And I also think, too, with also getting recruited, it was crazy, man. Crazy, crazy story. I had a great summer going into junior year. Like I said, we were guys that I play with, super committed. We'd gone out to the Eastern Invitational, the camp, killed it there. Leaving the camp, I had 11 D1 offers walking out of there. Going into junior year, I had a bunch. I had all of them still. But I was like, some of the advice that I'd gotten from other people, especially like big-time football players in my town, a lot of the dads who had coached me growing up, one of them gave me great advice, which was like, if they will not talk to your parents on the phone, right? Like make your parents your gatekeepers. This is before cell phones, right? Mm-hmm. So like, make them call the house and make sure that they talk to your parents before they talk to you. If they don't talk to your parents, then they are not worth their salt. Cut them out, right? They gave me the whole list of like, where do you want to go? I wanted to make sure I could go somewhere my dad could always drive to go to a game. Yeah. So that basically meant like the Northeast region. I wanted to, we got to have some TV games. So that cut out a lot of schools. Yeah. But I had 13 total offers going into senior year, and they were all pressuring me to sign early. And it was September, like the first week of school, and like each week I lost one. So by the time it was like mid-October, I had 2 offers left, and that was Sacred Heart and UMaine. And my coach is like, so what do you want to, my head coach is like, what do you want to do? Like, you could prep if you want. It's like, it's like you're probably in the running for Player of the Year if you play like you normally do for Connecticut. So you could prep. I was 16 at the time, right? Yeah. I was going to turn 17 by the end of the year. Young. So he's like, if you did it, that'd be fine. But my brother went to prep school. I didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. Like, I already knew that ahead of time. Like, I'm not going to go. So it left me with, I could wait to the end of the year. And my advice that I had heard from everyone was, if you sign with a school after the season, that's because something happened in their program. Mm-hmm. They didn't get the guys that they wanted, so you're not who they want. Yeah. They're going to fill that spot soon. So for me, I was like, all right, I got one of these 2 schools. I went on a visit. UMaine visit was awesome. Loved it. I still stand by my choice. I still think it was a really good choice. All the same reasons that I liked about it when I committed, I loved it when I left, and I still like it now. When I went to Sacred Heart, not to throw shade, but it was a horrible visit. Absolutely horrible. Slept on the floor. Ooh. Right, of the dorm room. Yeah. One of my teammates was there, and we had a good time. We played some pickup. Me, him, his roommate, and another guy from my team from my high school. We went on a visit together. They treated him like dog shit. It was terrible. Wow. They wanted him to be a walk-on, and I didn't know how they treated walk-ons, like coaches. Yeah. I had no idea. So when I saw them, like, they didn't even talk to him. They didn't even like really address him. They were like, he was just like another body. Yep. I was like, how are you going to treat someone like this? Like, you think I want to come play here? Yeah. Right? So I still stand by the choice. So for me, it was like a no-brainer for Maine. But when I got there, you see these guys, who can really shoot it. So I'm like, all right, well, I can play the 2. I can't shoot it like Kev.
Yeah.
Like, I can for sure play the 3.
Yep.
And the reason why I played the 4 in college is because no one would rebound.
I know.
Right? Flav had graduated.
Yeah.
Dubes had graduated. We had these big dudes like you, right? Like 6'10", 6'7", 6'9", who could jump. When they were gone, no one would rebound.
Yeah, your junior and senior years, you guys had nobody rebound.
We were small.
That's right.
Right? So it turned into like, all right, if I'm taking your jump ball in D1 in college, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with a 40.
Now I won them.
Yeah.
I won them, right? Yeah. So I won them. So it wasn't bad.
You jumped today.
But like, so that was the thing, right? Like, so when like me and the 2 guard and so Kev often led the team in rebounding.
Yeah.
Then I was second, and then our big.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
So-
it's great. And Kev's like
I was
even.
like, I'm gonna go get it.
Kev's even.
You know?
Go get it.
Kev's even a little shorter than you.
Kev's shorter than me.
Yeah, and by the time you guys were upperclassmen, Kev couldn't jump anymore. Like I
when he
knew
broke his
Kev.
foot, yeah.
I knew Kev in high school when me and him were in high school at the same time. Like
Yeah.
Kev could jump back
Yes.
then, but
Yeah.
like, but that him leading the team in rebounding, you second in rebounding, and this is like 6 foot and 6'2".
Right.
Is
So-
crazy.
But I could always play in the post, right? You know, and I'd learned the drop step. I learned, who didn't learn the dream shake growing up?
Yeah.
Right. Like I'll never forget in high school. My coach was like, "If you can do something that no one else can, you won't be able to come off the court."
Right.
Right. So I'd learned one year because I saw this one kid do it. He was doing the drop step and just doing it right into a hook. And I was like, "Shit, man! Like if I could do that, like I could jump higher than him. Like I'll make it." So I got the right hand jump hook. And then one day I was like, well, if they always know I'm going to go right, I should be able to do it left. So I got the right, I got the left. Then I was like, oh, if I can do this, I can do the fade away. So I learned the fade going right, learn it going left. I was like, if I do that, I just do up and under. So I had the package because I put in the work. So when I got to college and you post some dude up that's like your size, 1, they don't expect it. 2, I can jump higher than them. And 3, I move like a guard. So now I'm playing the 4 and it's small. I'm undersized, but if coach can get away with it, you can get away with it.
As a senior, Chris shot 55% from the floor as a 6'2" player. Yeah. And in conference, I think you were above 60%.
I was above 60. Yeah.
In conference play.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many shots a game did you take?
He took it.
Like 11, 12.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Oh.
like he was.
That was just a nightmare.
He just, did not miss, and it was crazy. 6'2" power forward, like being guarded by dudes, like 6'8", 6'9".
My thoughts,
and he just didn't miss.
Still to this day are, if you take a shot, I expect it to go in.
Right.
Right. Like I wouldn't just put it up. So every shot was like, all right, you got to be balanced. You got to put it off, get them off balance. But my whole thought, like the way I played was, if I have a guard on me, I will post them up. Mm-hmm. If I have a big, I'm gonna go stretch them out. I feel like if I played in today's basketball, I would kill kids.
Oh yeah, because
right?
you were still playing when people had to have traditional positions.
Yeah, I would love it now. I'm like on the wing, get the ball on the floor. Oh, love it. I love it.
I have a couple of memories of you as a player, distinct memories, which is the putback at Harvard, which was insane. You still owe me that video of that. Because
yes.
I'll put that up.
Okay.
I can convert right here. I've been doing it, man. I just need that. Yeah. That was one of the best dunks I've ever seen, man. That really, and it was before the YouTube era. You need to find the video of that for me. But that one, there's dunk against someone. There was a still photo where you're like hitting your head on the rim.
Oh, dude, that was wild.
On the backboard while you're dunking it. Like there's a still photo of his head is hitting the backboard while he's dunking it from the side.
Yeah.
And then your freshman year, the semifinal, you guys are playing Stony Brook. You're up by like 1,000,000 points.
Okay.
And Giannini opens the bench and he's finally putting you in, and he's like, "Hey, Chris, don't fuck this up."
Yeah,
so you guys are up by 40.
Yeah.
And he said there's 2 minutes left, and he's done.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Yeah. So that's funny. That game that you're talking about where I hit my head on the backboard, that we used to play like the UMaine system schools.
Yeah.
And those games are fun.
Yeah.
That's one of those years like, you guys aren't poorly skilled. You're just small.
Yeah.
So it's only a matter of time until you get the guns out and start throwing lobs and whatnot. That play was wild, though. I was like, you know what? Because, when you play against big dudes who are like, 6'7", 6'8", if I go to the basket and I jump and they see me going to dunk, like, they'll just knock you out of the air.
Yeah, they're going to try and just foul you as hard as they can.
I was on the side. I was like, if I jump, he's not going to block it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I usually felt most of the time. And, like, usually, if a big dude comes, that's when I'll reach under.
Yeah.
But, dude, I got hit hard. And I was like, dude, what the hell was that? Came to the ground like, Bruff, yo, what is your problem? He didn't call anything. He's like, you hit your head. I was like, I did not. So, I mean, that.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So I can say that didn't happen at any other time in my life.
Yeah, that was impressive. What were your experiences like up at Maine on the basketball team? Because you guys, so your freshman year, you guys get there, you guys get to the championship. It was almost like the perfect storm to get you guys into there, because you had Boston University they were projected to be as high as an 11 seed. They won 17-1 in conference. They had won like 25 of 26 games, their last 26 games. They were getting top 25 votes, which never happens at that level. And they get upset in the opening round of the America East tournament on their home court, so they're out. Northeastern has J.J. Barea. Everyone's like, okay, so this is Northeastern's open. They get upset by a Hartford team that had like 7 healthy players, so they're out. And then Vermont had Taylor Coppenrath was the best player in the conference, but he hasn't played in 3 months or 2 months. 2 months. He had a broken wrist. He hadn't played he missed like half the conference season, maybe.
Pretty much the entire thing.
And it's like, so suddenly now you guys, and you guys, your opening round game against Binghamton with the big 7-footer, Big Nick, my guy. Nick picks up the most absurd technical foul in human history to kind of the ball rolls to him after a charging call, and he picks it up and just spikes it into the rafters, and that
he was known for that though.
Yeah, oh yeah, Nick was crazy. NBA level ability and size, but a bit of a space cadet. So then you guys wind up in the championship game, but then Coppenrath comes back after. So
all right. If you ask certain guys, I'll tell you certain things. But I'll give you my lens from the end of the bench as a freshman. Yeah. Right, I did not pay attention a lot during the games because I knew I wasn't going to play. Right, so there's that. Yeah. One of Coach G's big things that he used to mention all the time was that if you were a player, if you were on a team and you're winning the rebounds and you're within 5 points with 5 minutes left in the game, you're more likely to win. Right, so they'd have the printed out stat sheets, and he was a big stat guy for that. So I'd always look at it and I would follow the rebounds throughout the game. I'd look at who's had more possessions, who had more time with the ball, all that. And we always won those things because those are the things that we focused on. We won a lot of games in the conference. If you pull it out, you can look at our record in the conference.
Games that year, yeah. That was a first.
I think we only lost 3 or 4 games in the conference. Yeah. So I'll be really honest. I didn't think we were out of place for being in that game. I thought we should win. We beat Northeastern at home. We beat Vermont. We lost to BU, I think, twice. Yeah. And we beat all the other teams. Yep. Right? So, to me, I was like, I think we finished in 3rd.
Yeah, you did.
So I'm like, okay, we're not out of place. We should be up here, right? I do not think we prepared well for the game. I won't forget in practice. We were going through all the stuff because, being at the end of the bench, I'm the scout team. And, we're ready for Sorrentine. Yep. But everyone was like, well, how much can Sorrentine put up? Oh, dude could put up 40. This dude's nice, right?
He put up 45 against Northeastern when I was...
He was nice. He could shoot it. He could handle. He could jump. I was like... They're like, well, he broke his wrist last year. I was like, and? He seems fine right now. And then Coppenrath broke his hand in our game at UMaine. Yep. Right? In, January. Yeah. And it was like a freak thing. He, fell. And we couldn't even figure out why he wouldn't get off the floor. Right? So everyone was like, well, Coach G was like, I don't know if he's going to even play. And I was like, I think he's going to play. I think he'll go strap his arm together. He's going to play. And they're like, well, he won't be in game shape. And I'm like, you have everyone who's hurt working out. Yeah. Why wouldn't he be in game shape? If he's going to come back, and they knew that was the first game that he could play in.
Yeah. Yeah, he missed. It was something. It was like 8 weeks or something of games.
It was going to be his potential first day back. Yeah. And I'm like, he's playing.
Yeah, he was playing.
He's going to play. Yeah, would you not play in this game?
Abs, I'd be in there in a heartbeat.
Right? Am I starting I'm sorry. You have to tear me off the court. So anyways, I didn't feel like we were preparing for him. And he came out and he outscored us in the first half himself. He scored more points than our whole team in the first half.
I heard.
But I will say this. The only time I've ever heard Fish sing live was at that game, right? And, Coach G was like, it's going to be a big game. It's going to be wild. The crowd's going to be bumping, which it was. I'd never seen anything like that for college basketball. And he's like, if Fish is going to be there, and Joe Campbell loves Fish, and one of my teammates, and he's like, they're going to be there. He was riled up, and I was like, okay, I don't even know who this band is. Never heard of them in my life. They started singing, and I got the goosebumps. I turned, I was like, who are these people?
Fish?
Fish, P-H-I-S-H.
Okay.
They were amazing.
Really?
Absolutely. Beautiful. Just absolutely beautiful. And then they came in and kicked our ass in the game. It was wild. It was wild.
The thing
Powered by Fish.
So there's a story that was told to me from a guy who works in the America East Conference back when I was on good terms with the America East Conference. So this is a while back, but he's still there. Matt Bork is the I would say that he's he's a guy that I still respect and like, even though I'm sure we couldn't have a conversation because of my outspoken views on things. But he told me a story that Giannini before the game, he was like, is Coppenrath going to play? And Matt Burke, who was a student at UMaine and then worked at UMaine before becoming a member of the conference. He was now working for the America East Conference, but he knew Giannini from his days working at Maine. And he goes, yeah, I think Coppenrath's going to play. And Giannini's like, if he plays, I'm thinking about single covering him. And Matt Burke's like, I don't think you should do that. And Giannini was like, I think that's what I'm going to do. And then at halftime, he's coming off the court, and Matt Burke's working the game for the conference, and Giannini's like, yeah, single coverage was a bad idea. Coppenrath scored 43 points. Yeah. 43 points,
He was a talent,
15 rebounds,
He was a
with a broken wrist
Yeah.
in his first game back after missing
Wonderful
2 months.
talent.
Like,
Basketball gods came down and blessed this man. And we're like, this is your time, son. This is your time.
Sure.
I mean, so on top of that, like, you know, he played well. In all fairness, too, Mopagila was amazing that game, too.
Yeah.
Like, he played really, really well. Scotty Barnes played really, really well. Sorrentine was on fire. Like, they were all firing on that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then Coppenrath was Coppenrath, right? So, like, it was, I mean, and they weren't bad, right? They were really good. They won. Yeah. They beat Syracuse the next year.
Yeah.
They all the same team.
Yeah,
so they didn't stink. So
it was the exact same team. So it was. What was it like getting as a freshman? You get to the championship game.
Yeah.
Do you expect that you're going to be back there at some point?
I assumed we'd be back the next year. Right. Like I thought for sure. Like, all right, we're all going to lock in. We're going to come back in the next year. Coach G left that year.
Yep.
You know, and I feel like when you get a new coach, you either do really, really well or you do just below what you did. And we were the just below.
Yeah.
I don't think that we, like, underperformed. Like, Markwood got hurt. He like, pulled his hamstring.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, was Markwood there?
Yeah, Markwood was there.
Okay.
Oh, dude, Markwood was tough, man.
Yeah.
That's what he told me.
He was real. He's tall, right? He's like 6'4". He could shoot it. He could defend.
Yeah.
No, he was good.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he could play the point.
He could
too,
jump,
so.
even though he didn't like to.
Yeah.
He could really like jump. Yeah.
Well, there was one dunk against Binghamton, and
Dude, you should have seen his dunk. You should have seen his dunk at BC. It was wild.
Yeah.
He went baseline, and I was like, oh, there goes Mark with like layup, right? He held on to it. Guy jumped with him. He put both hands on the ball and just like hammered it. And I was like, what? Like, I want, right? So
I might have that one on film. I'm gonna go look through it.
We played at Binghamton.
Yeah.
I took the ball out, and we had this play for Andy Bedard like years ago, and I'd seen it, and we'd run it for Markwood, but we wouldn't throw the lob. And I was like, dude, Markwood could jump. So I'm taking the ball out, and I see him going. I was like, dude, if I throw this, he has to get it because he knows I'll come out. So I lob it up, and Markwood grabs it in the air, and he's up. So now he might as well dunk it, throws it down. He comes back down, huffing and puffing down the court. Don't ever do that again. I'm like, what's the problem, man? That was crazy. That was crazy. Oh man, no. But I assumed we'd be back.
Yeah,
I always did. I thought like we were good. I thought we were good enough. Markwood got hurt. Ernest Turner got hurt as well.
Yep.
He also pulled his hamstring.
Yep.
During that same time. That's when my playing time went from like 18, 19 minutes a game to like 12 as a sophomore. We needed a point guard, and I'm not a point guard. As I've told you very well.
Yeah.
So our freshman walk-on all of a sudden was our point guard. Right? So, our chemistry isn't as good. Both those guys kind of come back a little too early. Like, it seems like every single college player does. And they just weren't who they were before they got hurt. So I think we won our first conference game, and then we lost the next one. All those guys graduated, and I was like, okay, we got a shot still. I think we got a shot. Kev breaks his foot. I think in like our best player all-time best shooter at UMaine, breaks his foot, I think in the first practice, like first full practice, first to second, first week anyways. And, you know, I've never seen a coaching staff get so demoralized.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you recruited me too. Like, I can score. Hello. Right? But he broke his foot maybe like 30 minutes into practice.
Oh, wow.
He went up for a layup, and coach was like, don't contest his layups. How many times do I have to tell you? And I was like, wait, shit, why do you guys contest mine? Like, what the hell? I'm my fault. You're hurt. Like, anyway, but he broke his foot. He was out for the whole year. He redshirted. And that year was just like, let's just salvage, right? So like that. And then my senior year, I don't even know if I want to go into that one. You know?
You had a lot of dunks your senior year.
I did. I had a few of them. It would have been nice though to get some chemistry going.
Yeah.
But you know, when I'm your power forward, your best option at power forward, you know, we had a guy who could play it, but you know, it just wasn't. You know, you're not going to win a lot of games that way. So, and I'll say that very candidly, right? If I'm your power forward, we ain't winning games. You know, so
you had Kev was a senior because he came back as a redshirt senior. That's still a pretty good combination right there.
Yeah.
And Sheets as a senior, then Oli.
Yeah. We had Christian Cavanaugh, who was a big dude.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he transferred out. He wasn't getting a lot of playing time. He left. Phil, big dude. He could finish and score. We had Junior Bernal as a point guard. He was like 6'4". We had really good size, good talent. Mark Jacoby, I think he was like 6'4", 6'5". He could shoot it, put the ball on the floor, but we didn't have what my team my freshman year had.
Yep.
Which was guys who understood the system.
Yeah.
The guys who knew the plays. And the guys who, when we go into a game plan, like, they could probably still tell you the game plan now.
Yeah.
Of the game. But my senior year, like, those guys didn't have that. Like, I sat on the bench for a whole year and only did scout stuff. Mm-hmm. So I knew every other team plays inside out. Like, they start moving, and I wouldn't have to think about it. I could put my hand up, here goes the ball. These guys never learned it. They stepped on the court and they played. And not that they didn't play poorly, but, you know, it's different.
When your career came to an end, there were a lot of guys still at that time, you know, 2007. There's still a ton of guys going from low Division I over to different leagues in Europe. I mean, the bubble had burst at that point. It's not like, you play in the America East, you can go play in, like, you know, in second division in France and, like, make bank, which was happening, you know, 10 years ago. But you could still make a living after taxes. But you never went that route. And there were a lot of lesser players from the same conference that did go that route and play for several years overseas. Did you think about pursuing that at all?
I did. I could not. Injuries.
Yeah.
So that's the part of the story I haven't shared is that at the end of freshman year, they were considering redshirting me just because, like, my back was so bad. Like, you know, I had to, you know, get every scan with every single letter. Mm-hmm. I couldn't redshirt because we went on a trip to Canada, and I played in games in Canada, and they didn't think it was going to count, but it did count. So then it was like a whole wasted year.
Right.
And then sophomore year, I had pulled my hip flexor, and then that year pulled my hamstring. 'Cause I still blame us switching from Nike shoes to New Balance shoes. Right? I'll go to my grave on this one. My shoe rips and playing Markwood, coming over the screen, got over, shoe rips, similar to Zion, shoe rips, hip goes out, just hip flexor goes, hamstring goes, right? And, you know, that hurt, overcompensated, came back way too early. Left knee started bothering me, overcompensated on my right, developed horrible Achilles issues. Junior year and senior year, during the season, I wore a boot all through school.
Wow.
Right? So, like, I'd wear the boot and barely could make it to class, popping Motrin IBs all day, right? Destroying my kidney, right? And then get to practice, and we'd do 3.5 hour practice, and I got no off days. Like, I didn't get less reps. I was always on the court. And then you got other guys who like, I feel tired. And, all right, go ride the bike. I'm like, ride the bike? Like, dude, I wore a boot. I haven't stopped wearing a boot since the season started. So senior year, after I graduated, you know, I was kind of livid about a bunch of things, but I was like, hey, like, you know, I would like to keep playing. Like, do you guys know what I should do? Like, what are the steps? What are you doing for players? Got crickets, right? So I ended up reaching out to some of the girls at UMaine who had left the year before, like Heather Ernest, Abby Schrader, and they were like, "Oh, like this is my agent. She, you know, she has boys, she has girls as well." I got signed up with an agent. I got a bunch of different offers to go play, but when it came to like getting back in shape, Sam, dude, I tried to run. Like I had my own regiment at home. I won't forget. I was at my house. I tried to run down the street. You know, I did all my stretch and all that before. I made it to the end of my street, and I couldn't make it any further. I had to sit in the sun for like an hour.
Wow.
And then I had to walk back home. My mom was like, "Oh, you're back. Like, you came from the wrong direction." And I was like, I can't run. Like, I can't do it. I tried to play a little bit more, get back in shape, couldn't do it. Had to make the phone call, be like, I can't play. You know, had to, and having to make that kind of call is very tough. Went to the chiropractor, went to a few doctors. My chiropractor was like, you walk worse than 70-year-olds who come in, right? Another doctor was like, you should probably have surgery on your Achilles. It's gonna go. So for me, I was like, all right, I guess I got to find who I am now, right? Like, who am I without sports? Like, am I something else? And I think that's like really hard for a lot of people, especially when, like, the way I left the area was like, oh, like, you're this big time basketball player. Like what am I going to do now? Because I was a true athlete at school. Like, I was not the student. I went to school to be an athlete there. So it was like really hard to picture it because I'm thinking, I want to try to get 8 to 10 years out of playing overseas. I want to try to get some kind of nest egg. Let me do some real estate stuff maybe. Let me do some of this. Let me be like a broadcaster. Let me run my own show. Like, let me do something like that after I've made some money. So at that point, I was like, all right, what do I do now? I thought about it. I'm like, I talk a lot. I'd like to talk a lot. So I ended up going into sales. I work for a company, Herf Jones. You know, sell cap and gowns, class rings, diplomas, that kind of thing, in and out of schools. And then eventually I moved up here, started working for Comcast, doing business-to-business sales. And that's when I was like, I mean, I really took the job because I needed a job.
Yeah.
Right? Like, not because I was like, I'm passionate about selling stuff to people.
Yeah.
Like, who cares about that? And then my wife was a teacher, and I'd always kind of thought about it. My high school coach had told me years ago, he's like, you are a teacher. Like, you know, when I do camp, he's like, you always pick the kids who are struggling the most. Like, you want to see them do better. Mm-hmm. Not because they believe it, but because you believe it more than they do. So he'd always kind of said that to me whenever I'd go back around. He'd always say, like, when are you going to become a teacher? When are you going to become a teacher? So when I looked into it, kind of like floated it to my wife, and she's like, all right, if you go into teaching, you're going to have to go back to get your degree. You're going to have to be in school for a bit, and you probably want to get it over with. And I was like, okay. She's like, why don't you just do a whole year program? We'll be dirt poor, but you'll be done. And she's like, you better get a job by the end of the year. And kudos to my wife. That was her advice. So we went for it. Got into a program with Leslie. I did my whole year practicum, did all the courses. She worked like 2 jobs. Like, we really almost never saw each other outside of other friends' weddings or like parties and stuff like that. Grinded for a year, right? Got the job, and she was like, okay. Like, during this same year, we also got married. We were thinking about buying a house at the end, so it was a lot of change at that time. But, you know, once I became a teacher, I mean, I haven't really looked back from it. It makes me happy every day. You know, when I work with my students, you know, I'm working right now summer school, and it's really hard for me to at least to see a kid who like doesn't like school, doesn't want to learn. And also at the same time, like, school isn't easy for me either. Like, I was constantly in and out of trouble, completely misunderstood a lot. So I feel like I want to help every one of those kids reach their best potential. So it's been good for me. Honestly, playing basketball is probably like the least of my concerns now. Yeah. It's fun to look back at, but like, would I have ever gotten there? Definitely not. But I'm kind of very happy that it ended the way it did.
So where do you see the kids being misunderstood?
I feel like behavior students who are like typical behavior kids, I feel like those kids are the most misunderstood. I also find myself like gravitating towards like the kid who is like myself, like a black boy who gets treated differently because they're a black boy. Like I haven't grown since I was like in 8th or 9th grade.
Okay.
Right, so I was like huge for years. I'm sure you went through the same thing, right?
I'm with you.
So like I'd get judged as if I were much older than I actually was, or like why can't you do this, or and just there's so many like unspoken things that I see with a lot of my black students that I'm always like, just have you asked them something? And then I realize like when I ask them questions, like even my language is different when I speak to them. Like even my demeanor and how I talk to them is very different than even some of the other teachers that I work with. And I don't think it's like all intentional. I think it's some of it's just like cultural. Like I know, right? And then also some of that comes too with respect as well. One of my kids that I have right now this summer, he's been having some issues because he's going to be new. He's a Boston student. He's going to be coming into Lexington.
Okay.
And
Metco or
Metco. Yeah, he's in Metco. And the biggest challenge that I have seen with him is that he doesn't know he has no idea what he's in for, right? And like some of his behaviors that he's showing right now, I'm like, you can't do this. Like you're going to be the only kid in school who's responding this way. Let me help you.
Yeah.
Let me give you the keys to the kingdom, because I feel like what you're going to get is let's go through all of our, I forget what they call them, but like, let's go through all our protocols. Right? When this happens, I'll say this. And then when this happens, I'll say this. And I'm like, why don't you just talk to the kid? The biggest thing that I found out was he wakes up so early in the morning, he's too tired to eat breakfast. Yeah. So I was like, then eat breakfast. He's like, well, I'm not allowed to eat when everyone else is going to eat. I was like, well, you're hungry. Like, if you're going to be like hangry, right, then go eat. Like, I don't want you arguing with me. If you want to do this math problem, just sit down and eat your food, and then just listen. Like even something as small as that, and I know like a lot of teachers are like, well, why didn't he say something, or why didn't or I would do the same thing. I'm like, okay, well then ask, just talk to him. So I feel like not that that's a big thing to offer, but I at least want to be there for kids in different ways.
What makes teachers so reticent to actually speak to the kids?
I think there's a lot of different people who teach. I think a lot of people, I feel like I'm guilty of it sometimes myself in coaching, where like you do what worked for you best.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you stick with that.
Yeah.
So it's like really hard to see, like, why is this a problem? Like, this is how I would tackle this problem. I think that's sometimes hard. I think the other thing too is a lot of teachers are really rigid. Yeah,
they
right. Like I've done this for 20 years, or I've done this for 10, or it worked for this kid. And I also think too, like if you haven't had experience in it, then it's really hard to understand or even figure out where someone's coming from, and that's just because you just haven't lived it. Like when I think about and the same, I'm guilty of it too, where like I'll never forget this. My first year being in Lexington. One of my parents, God bless her for saying this, because at the time I couldn't believe when she said it, and now I'm like, I'm really happy she did. She was like, I was talking to a bunch of the kids, and like I'll tell them, like, I'm very disappointed. Like, this is not what I would expect from you. Well, I'd say that because that's how my mother would say something like that, right? My father, no problem, no shame saying that, right? And then my teacher was like, sorry, my teacher, my parent was like, I don't talk to my kids that way. And I just looked at her. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you wouldn't say that? She's like, I would never say that. And I'm like, well, why not? And she's like, well, that's just not how you parent. I was like, okay, well, that's how I teach. I'm like, my kid can't react that way. My kid is not you. And I was like, huh, you are right. Right? So so when I would say something like that kid is shut down. He's done for the day. And I think just as I did that for that student, I think that sometimes happens for other kids too.
So my path to teaching, I had kind of washed out of baseball after college. I'd gone down that road and then had realized that I was miserable playing and just wasn't the same because things that had happened in my life, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I took a job as a assistant teacher at Arlington High School. But I didn't really think I wanted to be a teacher because I was still in my mid-20s, and I could still remember being in high school and being right back in a high school setting. I felt like, man, I had all these plans about what I want to go do in life, and now I'm just back in high school. But I coached that year, and I got to know kids, and I built these relationships, and it was very relational. And then I went on to do other things for a while. I, went into media. Was a marketing director, had my own thing going. But none of it, nothing that I did in the corporate world or in the media world, like brought me like happiness, like I was getting, or a sense of purpose, like when I was working with kids. And I was like, I think I need to be a teacher. And people had said that for a while. And so I went through all the alternative ways to get a license. I wound up getting like 5 licenses. But I wound up working with, being a special ed teacher was one of my licenses. And I wound up working with students that had like trauma backgrounds, because that's a lot of behavioral kids. The reason their behaviors are the way they are is because they've experienced trauma. Mm-hmm. And trauma can come in a bunch of different forms. It can be, like you think of typical like sexual abuse, physical abuse, whatever. But there's like school-based trauma. You've got a learning disability, and teachers are not understanding it. They're not teaching you in a way, like you're not getting the supports you need. So trauma comes in many different forms. But I just gravitated to kids like that. And it really was such a rewarding job working with the kids. But for me, it was very difficult dealing with administration. So much of the job I felt like had nothing to do with the kids. For you and so many teachers, it's hemorrhaging teachers now, the profession. And we're in Massachusetts. It's one of the states that takes the best care of teachers. Mm-hmm. I don't think we take care of teachers, but we pay them better than most other states. We give them more supports than most other states do. Why have you been able to stay in it? Have you ever thought during all this, during COVID, school shootings, just administrative bureaucracy, tightening legislation about it's so crazy how part of the country doesn't trust us with lesson plans, but they think that we should be trusted to like carry a firearm in the classroom. How have you been able to stay in it? Have you ever thought about that? Like, have you ever contemplated leaving the profession?
No, I haven't contemplated leaving. I do think, though, I don't know if I'd want to be a teacher for until I'm like 65.
Yeah.
I always kind of think what else? Maybe there's something else in the profession for me. But for me, I still like going to school. I still like seeing my kids. I feel like every year I get a new group of kids. So it's very different. I also try to switch it up every year with doing stuff. Right now, I'm this is going to be public, so I guess I'll have to get over saying this out loud and being recorded on this, but I just don't always do the curriculum. And I think some people get stuck on the curriculum and they just have to hit all the things, and if they hit all those things, then they've done their job. But I always try to remember myself in school. The principal and I were we should have been on a first name basis. I was in his office all the time. And so there were things I just didn't like about it. And I'm why do we need to do this? Why can't we enjoy school? So I try to do a lot of that. I try to do a lot of project-based learning. I think building community in my classroom is the most important thing. And I will not teach sometimes to just do that. A few years ago, I thought it was really important that the students learn about money. And in 4th grade, so many times I'd see the kids come in and they couldn't break $1. Mm-hmm. And I'm how can you not break $1? And one of the kids said to me, well, you just use a card. I was okay,
right.
I'm with you. I'm with you, right? And now it's I can use Venmo, I got Zelle, I got all this stuff, right? But I'm but still, you don't understand. You really don't understand the value of $1. You have no concept of what that means. So I was trying to devise a way to create a money system, and my sister sent me something about a classroom economy, and then I went down the rabbit hole, found that. So I started doing that a few years ago, and now it's kind of blown up, and now all my students are always the students who come in the next year from 3rd grade are oh, I want to be in Mr. Bruff's class because they do the classroom economy. And for the past 2 years, I've been I actually don't want to do it. It is a tremendous amount of work. we don't hit all the social studies, science, math, or reading lessons because you have to cut something somewhere. And at the same time, I'm like, I think those things are super important too. But so is the community part. And this year, the kids killed it. They were amazing with the classroom economy. We had some kids who couldn't afford the kids got to buy their desks. Right? They got to pay rent on their desks. There were a few kids who couldn't do it. They couldn't afford it. They got fines for poor behavior, not handing things in, stuff like that. So they were in debt. They also didn't want to fill in the extracurricular activity sheets for bonus money. Like if they did something like this, they could write that down. If they went to church, they could write it down.
Yeah.
If they went to go see a grandma, they baked cookies. If they put the dishes, just fill it out, right? It gave them all the structures to do it. They just wouldn't do it. I had a group of kids this year who were like, we're going to set up a charity to help kids afford and get out of debt. I was like, man, you guys rock, right? So that's the stuff that makes me still want to be a teacher.
Great story.
Because you're like, who wouldn't want to spend time with kids like that, And one of the assistant superintendent was like, I think you do such a really good job. You get kids excited to go to school. And I'm like, all right, yeah, that's all true. But what else? Right. So right now this year, I'm kind of thinking what else? A few years ago, we did a podcast.
That's awesome.
That was a ton of fun. I'd like to do that again, maybe. I'm also thinking do we revamp the book club? Because we did one year. I was like, let's do a whole grade book club. I get to know my kids really well, but I know them as students. I don't get a chance to see them outside of the classroom. I don't know who they are at lunch.
But with the book club, is there a curriculum of books that you have to follow, or would you give them books?
I pick the books I want to read.
Okay.
Right? Because at the end, because I'm like, it's all extra work.
Right.
I got to I literally had to stay up late at night, doing projects to build it out. I worked with a few other teachers in my school and was like, hey, I need your help on this. I want this to be good. Can you help me out? Reading specialists helped me out. I sent out a thing to the entire staff. We did a Harry Potter thing. I was like, hey, I need teachers to come in. It'd be fun for them to see you interact with the class. It was a ton of work. My team was awesome. They helped me out. They pushed it out. If I would hey, I need an extra 10 minutes. Can you give me 10 minutes? Yeah, sure. I'll do it. I had more than half the grade doing it. It was a ton of fun, but it could burn you out if you do it every year.
Right.
So that's one I'm thinking how do we bring that back without the burnout?
Yeah.
So is there blowback because you said you don't finish the curriculum of what the school is mandated?
He said he doesn't always stick to the curriculum.
Yeah. I haven't heard it.
Okay.
I assume there is.
Right.
I assume.
Right.
But when you get kids excited about doing something, right? How could you be upset about it?
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
I agree. So, and it was,
but I'm sure there is.
Oh yeah.
It's so you and I have taught in very different places because you're in Lexington, which is one of the best by ranking school systems in the country, and I've taught in a lot of school programs that are specifically based towards behavioral students, collaboratives, bringing kids from different places. But I think getting kids engaged, no matter where you are, is super rewarding, and that's kind of the payoff. I did a lot of project-based learning where I was because it got kids engaged, and they were learning concepts, and they were excited about school for the first time, which was really awesome. A question that I have, so you said you gravitate to students like you that are misunderstood, many of them black, but you teach in a very white district. For all the talk of Lexington getting more diverse, it's a very white, affluent
It's pretty
town.
white. I would say, though, the demographics have shifted a ton. A lot more Indian students.
Yeah.
I would say I have a very diverse class. I might have 4 white kids in my class. Which is wild.
That is wild to me from what I know of Lexington. Been driving through there my entire life.
It's what you see. It's what you see when you drive through.
Growing up in Cambridge, Lexington was always the rich kids to us.
Yeah, so. I think I have 4 white kids in my class. That was about it.
My question is, do you feel you kind of who you are in your approach, the black students, you're really connecting with them, and I think you connect with all your students, but is there discomfort from parents that aren't black parents? Whether it's white parents or you're in this, you don't look like most of the demographic. The reality is, whether people want to accept it or not, subconscious bias is very much embedded in our society. People have subconscious responses when they see, a black man, dreadlocks, all this sort of stuff. Like, has that been a struggle in the classroom? Do you feel like how do parents and admin that don't look like you respond to you?
I'm sure it's there. I don't want to say like I play ignorant to it all, but at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter as much because I feel like I'm going to do the best that I can. For years growing up, I couldn't figure it out, right? Like why I would always get like a different response than some of my other friends when you're like the biggest, tallest black kid that walks into a room. Like for years, I couldn't figure it out. So once I started to, I was like, oh, like it really did shape the way I move into a room. I assume everyone sees me when I walk in, usually because I'm tall, usually because I'm black, and now that I have dreads, right? I didn't always before, but like now that I do, I'm like, you can't miss me. So like that is my first approach, right? Like I will just take on and say like, I don't know where you're coming from, but I already assume that you have a bunch of biases about me.
Yeah.
When I played basketball, and I used to get, all the questions, media stuff, and you had to like learn how to like say the right thing. For me, it wasn't that difficult because my parents forced me to do that kind of stuff all the time. My dad used to always be like, you're going to represent us well. You're going to do these things. So I felt like I'd learned to code switch very early, really early as a kid. But then I also like, my dad used to always say like, you don't have a choice. You have to be successful. And like, you hear that message. Sometimes it kind of sounds negative, but I always took that like as a challenge. And that's kind of how I approach things right now. I get along, I feel like really well with my immigrant parents because I will push their kid, right? Like if their kid doesn't do something well, isn't meeting my expectations. I feel like my expectations are really high because I'm very firm with them. I will call the parent and be like, they're not doing this. They should be doing this. What can I do? Is there something that is happening at home? And those parents are like, oh, we love Mr. Bruff. Like he'll make them do whatever. So, but also too, I think doing some of the extra things that I do and like trying to wrap it in, weave it into the curriculum has been really helpful. Like I was saying this year with our classroom economy, what was awesome about it, the kids can, I was like, hey, if you're in good financial standing, you can start a business and you can sell other things in the classroom. Kids did such a great job with it. One of the parents was like, hey, I got a friend who's starting up a business. Would you be interested in having them share and talk about it? I was like, why would I say no? This is a great resource. So like when you bring in, this Indian couple, or sorry, this Indian family who's making, their own hair products and showing them like, oh, hey, like women can be business owners. Like you can be a business owner. Like this is a product that comes from our culture. And now we're spreading this with the world. Like, these parents are like, wow, this is great. Like you invited us, you invited our culture in. That was something that I didn't always feel I had the opportunity to have when I was a student, right? And I feel like as a black teacher in a predominantly white school, I look for that to be like, hey, like how can I bring in like this subculture that most people might not know about in? That's that part we talked about before, right? Like you don't teach curriculum during that block, but what you just got has to be better.
Yeah.
Yes.
It has to be. That takes your social studies, that takes your math lesson for the day.
Yep.
It was. I mean, I wish I had recorded that Zoom that we did, but it was phenomenal. It was great. I have also found that for me, it's really important to get on some of those like committees where we plan curriculum. It's a lot more work. You get paid for it, but it's a lot more work and time. You got to be out of the classroom sometimes to do some of the stuff. But some of those things that I liked to do that were extra, I've been like, how can we do this in the curriculum? So we used to teach immigration, and with my parents being immigrants, I was like, well, some of your parents are immigrants, right? And I don't know how people felt comfortable about it before, but I'm like, to me, that was a sense of, like, I was really proud of that growing up. Like, I'm happy to tell people about it. I'm happy to tell people my parents' story. So I was like, well, your parents, I'm sure, want to share the story too. And then I found just from talking to my students that a lot of them didn't know how their parents got here. So then I was like, all right, well, let's spend a few days. Let's have your parents come in and share it. And the parents were like, what do you mean? I was like, you should come in and share. Like, we need to know this story. Like, it's a modern immigration story.
Yeah.
So we started doing that for a few years. Then finally I was like, we got to, this should be happening across the district because there's so many different people who can share stories. So I mean, we got great stories from every single continent now. We've got refugee stories.
Wow.
But like that was something that, you know, had never been done, but being on one of the curriculum reviews, I was like, we need to do this. You know, same thing with science. You know, I try to do this similar things with that.
Yeah.
Making sure that like, not to say like I have my stamp on it, but like, how can I bring some of those things that I think are really important, things that like make that really show me into our curriculum, you know?
But this is like the very, from what I'm hearing, this is the very definition of teaching, right? I mean, so you educo, right? Or educare and educere, right? So you're educere, in the spirit of educere, you're drawing out the best from them.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to input something into them, what you're getting is the best out of them. And I mean, isn't that what teaching is supposed to be about?
Yes, I would hope so. And I feel like my students, when they have, usually when that happens, you see that like that light go off, and I don't have to ask them to do something, right? I can just be like, hey, we're gonna do this for today, and they're like, oh yeah, let's go, let's do it.
Yes.
And because they think of it as like, oh, what am I gonna get out of this as well? So then, you know, it's still fun, you know.
You know, I keep saying this, and I'm laughing all the time with when parents come in and, you know, they'll say, okay, well, I want you to help my child with self-confidence. You know, to play basketball, self-confidence. I'm like, they don't need self-confidence. I know guys that shoot 1 for 17. They're not missing self-confidence. You know, players don't lack self-confidence.
Yeah.
What they lack is clarity.
Yeah.
You know, so what you're teaching the kids right now, you're giving them clarity on what, you know, on the process. You know, here's what it is. You're going to stumble a little bit, but look, stick with this, and you're going to be okay. This is what I hear.
Yeah.
I mean, this is great.
What do you feel as a teacher? Because we are somewhat insulated, protected in Massachusetts with the way that, you know, the education is set up here in this state. And the strength of teachers' unions up here and legislation and, you know, everything. But, like, what do you think when you see in other parts of the country, like, what's going on with the curriculum in Florida? People are talking about indoctrination. People are fearful of critical race theory in the classrooms. You know, Texas is, I mean, it's just what's going on with public education in other parts of the country. To me, I went through the stages of, like, being infuriated, being disgusted, now I'm just sad, you know? Like, what do you think about what's going on in other parts of the country?
All those things bother me. I think I went through all those same things too. It really still infuriates me a lot of the times when I see things, because we're constantly indoctrinating our kids anyways. Right? Like, we don't, the don't say gay bill really bothers me a lot, like a ton, like so much. I'm not gay, but I shouldn't have to say that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Like it's really ridiculous, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But also it's like you not saying that means that like you should really examine how often you say straight things.
Yeah.
It's implied in everything you do. So why is that an issue? So like that like really bothers me, because like as a kid I was always told like, we don't see color. Really?
Yeah.
Like, so why do I feel like you see me every time I walk in here?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why did you say the first time you saw me, oh, you must be new here? It's not because I was a new face. I stood out. So I always feel like I had to try to hide my race in school. And when I feel like someone has to like hide who they are, their gender, their sexual orientation, I'm like, that's so messed up. Like, why can't you just be yourself? Like, isn't that what we're trying to celebrate? And if that's what you're holding on to, right? Like, and you're a kid, and you're like, I can't be myself. Why would I trust you?
Yeah.
Like, why would I be willing to take a risk to learn? To me, I really don't get it. That kind of stuff like really bothers me. I think if I were a teacher in one of those places, I would still do it anyways.
Yeah.
I think I'm one of those people. Because I mean, like there are things that like I find important now. And, you know, I'm in a district where we can do those things.
Yeah.
I can still, you know, like when I told them that I want to do a book club and I'm going to do it during lunch and recess, the blowback was, well, the kids got to go outside. And I said, well, they don't have to do this. And they're like, well, it'll be implied that you have to go. I'm like, the kids don't have to go. Like, I'll do it with 3 kids if they want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm offering it to everyone because I should. And then we had like more than half the class. Or like when I was like, hey, like I want to teach you how to be successful students. How I want to teach you how to be successful humans. We did this thing for like morning meeting for the whole year. We did like a whole different, a theme every single week. We came back to it. We did 4 different things, right? It was all about how to learn to really how to build internal motivation. They were like, you have to do morning meeting. I was like, I am not doing morning meeting. I can't do it. My class, we can't do it. I can't do a meeting because they don't know what it means to be persistent. They don't have, not that they didn't have integrity, but like they didn't understand what that meant. Like being honest to yourself, right? Like, are you taking responsibility? I had to teach them that. Did I receive blowback from it at the beginning? Yes. At the end, they're like, thank you goodness. I'm so happy you talked about it. My kid's going home and they're teaching me about this. So I know if I were in one of those places, I would do what I thought was right. Because my mom says this all the time. What's right is right. It's never going to be wrong. So I would do that.
So,
you go ahead.
What is so now with the gender dysphoria and in the classroom, so everyone should be able to speak their own truth.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of them are having issues, right? Because they don't feel safe.
Yeah.
So is there enough support in the school system for kids who are feeling that way?
I think it's some. In my school, I feel like there is. But, I'd be naive to say it's perfect, right? Because, I think every teacher's trying to do their best. I'm sure in like 15 years, one of my students will be like, well, you never did, blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, shit, man, I wish I knew.
Right.
I think we really try to do our best. I don't feel like that's the case everywhere. Like some of my friends who are teachers in other places, like they just don't even address some of these things.
Okay.
A lot of places, they'll just say, well, I'll just read a book. And that's it.
Right. How do the kids feel about it? Do the kids, because I'm sure it's tough for them too. If
I think it really comes down to like, what is their message that they're getting at home? Because I think a lot of times kids are like really open-minded. And like they're willing to take, and they're willing to listen because that's all they're doing is learning, right? They're trying something out, and if it doesn't work, then they either don't do it again or they're like, oh, I'll try this next time, right? I would say the hardest thing is when they feel uncomfortable and then they don't know how to talk about it. In my school district right now, we do a dismantling racism curriculum. Where we'll talk about like how to dismantle racism. We'll talk about like oppression. We'll talk about power. We'll talk about like activism, and that can be really tough for our black kids specifically because as soon as you start talking about that, the first self-conscious thought is like, you're talking about me.
You're talking about me, exactly.
Yeah, and that's always hard. I just hope when the kids, as they get older, they look back and they say like, wow, this was helpful. Like, I felt like you were trying to see me in school. You were trying to respect that, like, we need to learn about this, and we need to dismantle some of these systems that are in place that are not helping me. What can we do to be more helpful for me? What can we do to be more helpful for everyone? I don't, I've had some of my former students that we've asked to like come back and like share some of their feedback on it. A lot of times they don't remember it, which is probably the most disheartening thing about being a fourth grade teacher. I'm like, I don't ever remember us doing this. And I'm like, okay, we spent weeks on this, but all right. Like, okay. But a lot of the times, as you kind of like jog their memory, they're like, oh yeah, I do remember that. But I feel like in education, it has to be like cyclical. Like you have to keep coming back to it. You got to come back to it again.
You
have to keep
start
coming.
and end in the fourth grade.
And I feel like as a district, like whatever you do, it needs to be wrapped around and it needs to be consistent. And I don't think it's ever going to be fixed in my lifetime. I know it sounds really unhopeful, but I still think we're making good strides. I don't think it's happening everywhere, but I would like to see it.
So what are the strides that are being made?
One of the big things that my district is really looking at a lot right now is how many of our students of color are being referred for SPED. Like, are we just putting our struggling black students, specifically struggling black boys, into SPED? Are we just not teaching them? Right? Is it just behavior? Right? So like, we're finally moving out of the talking about it into like, all right, what are the practices that we're doing? I think we still have a long way to go because, you know, when you look at it and you say like, well, this curriculum isn't helping them, but we still have the curriculum. So what? You know, are we gonna change that? You know, and then also too, the other thing that I think we need to, I personally would like to push for is how can we get them more like social emotional resources? Because I feel like the biggest issue that most of my specifically black boys have is like there's only a few of them, and their discussions with each other are not the same as their discussions with all of their other peers. And whenever I like overhear their discussions, like I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times this happened when teachers would be like, I couldn't believe what I heard them saying in the hallway, and then they recount the conversation to me, and I just like sit there and I'm like, so what's the problem? Like what is the problem? Like, why did you ruin their day over this?
Yeah.
So I asked a question about the social and emotional growth because I'm just thinking about what at that age, what was I being taught?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm reading, you know, excerpts of James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, you know, Still I Rise, you know, poems like that. And it was a different era. Okay, it was a different era, but there was a pride and an expectation in what you were supposed to do. Who you have to be successful, like your dad told you, and what you know, it's disheartening because it sounds like the kids. I mean, they don't get that. They don't get that at home, and they certainly don't get it in school or enough of it in school. So how do you fight that?
I don't know. I don't know. I like to be, I guess, like an example for them. It's kind of like, not to be like, I made it so you can, but like, one of my kids right now this summer, he told me that he doesn't like math because math is too hard. It's like, okay, well, what do you like to do? He's like, well, I like to make things. Well, like, make what? So he starts telling me about all these things that he makes for his cat. And I was like, oh, that's very cool. I'm like, you understand, like, you could make a business on this. He's like, I can't do that. I'd have to do math. I was like, dude, you could hire someone to do that stuff for you now. And he was like, oh, I could be a business. I'm like, yeah, why not? And right now we're making paper roller coasters, this whole engineering thing. And
Nice.
He was talking with his group about how to essentially like how to build their tower and how to build their tracks. And he was getting really frustrated with like doing the taping and doing some of the other parts. And he was like, well, I can do this. Why don't you guys do this? Why don't you do that? I was like, you sound like a project manager, right? Like, so I don't know if it's like, hey, let me show you that I believe in you. Let me show you that like you actually are doing the work. I think some of it comes around to like who your heroes are. I think some of it also comes down to like, what is the time? What is the, as I like to think of school, is like, how many opportunities are you giving this person? I feel like part of the reason why I am where I am today right now is because I was given a tremendous amount of opportunity. I feel like the amount of sacrifice my parents put, I wouldn't be here without it. My dad gave up time, energy. Like, I still can't believe how he still has any left in the tank. Because, you know, with driving everywhere to go to games, with the amount of fights he put up with me, with driving my brother places, doing things for my sister. And then on top of it, too, with, like, my mother, too, right? Like, I mean, if you're like, first generation, if you're an immigrant, you come in, I think my dad came with, like, just a few $100s in his pocket in the middle of winter from Jamaica, right? Like, that's tough. Right, like, but like, they did so much. Like, dude, when I talk about going to Maine, my dad had me convinced we were poor growing up. Like, I thought we were like dead broke. I was like, man, I don't even want to ask you for a new baseball glove, right? And then I went to college, and I was like, damn, I was rich. Like, I had no idea. Like, man, my brother and sister went to like elite prep schools. I went to a nice Catholic school. I had a car. We used to go on vacation every year. I had lessons. I learned languages. I was like, man, I was living, right? But like, I think the biggest thing that my parents always really were pushing was like, there's so much that you need to do. Like, just living isn't enough. Like, just having a good time, like your material things mean nothing. Like, what are you going to do with it? And yeah, I think that was like the biggest message that I always got as a kid growing up. I feel like I try to share that with my students. I don't think that's like the end all be all because there's so much more that went into it.
I mean, I really do think in my experiences, and I had almost a decade teaching, some stuff that you're saying that even though we taught different kind of populations, that like believing in them is really big, believing the best in them. Like, and my kids really went through hell and were kids that the society did not believe the best in at that point of their lives, and just assuming the best in them, letting them know they're capable, I think goes a really long way. Listening, like relationship building in general. It sounds really corny, but like taking the time to actually listen. I'll never forget one of my students, that young kid, like, but much older than his years at sometimes. I think it was labeled behavioral, but he was a kid with high energy and had a bunch of stuff in his background that, and he said to me one day, he's like, Sam, you're the first teacher that's actually listened to me. And like that one, like really listens to me. And I wasn't any sort of a spectacular teacher at that point. It was just, but it was something that I always try to do, is listen to the kids, and it goes a really long way, I think.
Yeah. I used to teach down in Randolph, different population of students. And I used to go into the room to teach writing. And, one of the kids was having give me a run for my money. And I was like, dude, you got to come in to do some of this work later. And so I was like, you got to come during like a lunch recess. And then that same day, a few of his friends in the line, as I was walking to my office, were just like out of control in the line. And I was like, you're with me too. And they were like, oh man, you're in trouble, blah, blah, whatever. And some of their friends were like, Mr. Bruff, can I come? I was like, for what? It's like, I just want to see what they're going to do. And literally I go, sure. Like, why not? Right. Yeah. So then the kids that were there, the kids who were not doing well in the hallway, they had to write about what happened, typical teacher stuff. Right. And then the kids who were there for work, they had to do their work. But the kids who were just there to chill and hang, we talked at lunch. And, when I say we talked, they talked. I just happened to be there. Right. Be respectful. Don't say anything rude, that kind of stuff, right? And then the kids who, were supposed to be there for, like, reasons, were like, they wanted to join in. And they were like, can we come back and do this again? And I was like, all right. If a kid's asking that, my answer should be yes.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, sure. All right, fine. I don't want to, but right. That's the right thing to do. Okay. So then it ended up settling that we would do it twice a week. And that they would come in, and it was like a typical lunch group. And finally, I was like, I should probably give this some like direction. But it was more like you said, right? Like they didn't say to me like, "Oh, we like hanging out in here, or we like doing whatever." But they were like, "Oh, can we bring someone else?" I was like, "Oh, it's like you want to come? Okay, yeah, sure." But like, it was nice to be there for them, because some of the conversations that I heard, I was like, "Wait, like, there was a fire at your house?" Like, you haven't been at your home in 2 weeks?
Right.
Like, why didn't you say something? Like, oh, my mom said I couldn't say anything. Or, like, this person left. Or, like, there was something going on. You're like, dude, what? Like, we can help you.
Yeah.
It's... that's the part where I'm like, man, I can't leave teaching because how am I going to help these kids? The
decision to leave for me was really, really heartbreaking. And I struggle at the end of every year with goodbyes in general with my students, and I think it's some of it is projecting, which you try not to do, but there are so many goodbyes I didn't get to have. I didn't get to have goodbye with my best friend, with my mom, my dad, all the people that I lost. But it's very hard for me at the end of the year to do with like a goodbye. But yeah, I miss it. Have there been times that have been scary for you as a teacher? I mean, Lexington's a safe safe town, low crime rate, all that sort of stuff, but plenty of the school shootings happen in safe towns with low crime
Yeah.
rate. Are you ever fearful as a teacher? I mean, you're dealing with fourth graders, so you'd think no, but still, I mean, there's horrible things have happened in schools with young children. And Bobby and I talked about how even the people that haven't experienced, like for me, how traumatizing having my own young kids when the latest happened. But like, have there ever been times that you've been fearful as a teacher?
So I have never been like afraid of the school shooting thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like being naive, not like it couldn't happen. But you know, I truly think it could easily happen. Unfortunately, it's like the world we live in, which is absurd. But I kind of I've always thought of it as like, if it does happen, will I be prepared for it? And we had one of those Alice drills, and like, you know, the cops come in and they go through the whole thing. And when the cop was like, "You're only gonna respond, right? Like you can't practice for this." And I've been around a few times for like gunshots going off, but when that happened in the school and like, you know, he talked about like some of your different actions, the things that they did. The way that I responded, I was like, okay, I feel comfortable, but at the same time, I was really fearful because I was like, the way that I responded was like, they were like, you know, hold the door if someone, if you can, you know, don't let the shooter in. That was me. And I was like, oh no, I'm the person who gets shot. I'm not going to go home to my kids.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm like, it's such a terrible thing to think, but like, why would I want to protect all of these kids here when I have my own kids at home?
Yeah.
But I know that I would.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what am I couldn't have those kids not go to their parents.
Yeah.
Right? So like for me, I can't understand why guns are everywhere. I don't really get it. I've never been into it, but I wasn't fearful of that. To be honest with you, the biggest thing that I'm very fearful of as a male teacher is being a male teacher in school and just having a poor reputation because of like Mr. Bruff said this, or like some like sexual harassment thing. So for me, I will not be by myself with a student.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really smart.
Like
a lot of the schools I was
I hate
with,
to say it, but
was,
I'm like a Mike Pence.
Yeah.
like I need another person in here. You're gonna sit here with me, so that and just like you and I are across the table from each other, I'm like, you're gonna sit over. I'm gonna sit right here.
Yep.
And my students know it all the time. I'm like, you need to be 2 squares away. I want everyone to have no doubt when they say, "Oh, this happened." Not with Mr. Bruff. He does not want you to come anywhere close. COVID has been wonderful for that. Let me tell you. So when the kids get close, you know, I'll have a few students sometimes at the end of the year be like, "Can I give you a hug? You're not a hug person." I'm like, actually, I am a hug person, but I am not a hug person with students. Like, I just don't. I don't ever want to be in that situation.
Yeah, a bunch of the schools that I taught at, that was like the rule was you're not alone one-on-one with students. There always needs to be a second person there, and I think that's something that's really important. Period. I had a very scary situation, and what was scary about it more than anything was admin's response, which was abhorrent. So I was working. I had left a program that I adored. I had been in a program I was a teacher in a school connected to a girls' residential. So girls had been through hell. They were in the system. 95% of them were sexual trauma survivors. So much trauma, like anger behaviors. But I felt totally safe there. I never had an incident in my classroom. I had a great relationship and rapport. I had to leave because my wife's job, where we were living, I just couldn't. I made this really long commute for a year there, and I couldn't do it another year. And it broke my heart to leave this school. And now that I live back in this area, I'll drive through Concord. I drive past the where this school was all the time, and I think back equal parts like fondly and really missing these students and thinking about the impact they left on me and feeling really terrible that maybe I didn't do enough for them. And a lot of them are struggling at this point in life. So I have all these feelings when I drive through there, but that was a great experience for me in the moment teaching. That was not the scary part working there. I left the job that I took because it was closer distance-wise where we were living, was for a collaborative program, which, it's like there are these collaborative, basically, schools where different districts, they all send their kids to them. And I was thrown into this classroom with awful administrative support. And the classroom was a mess. There was no systems in place, no nothing. New admin that was totally out of touch. Was not the situation that I thought I was going to be getting into. We had like 6 students who all had different IEPs and needs, and like some of them needing one-on-one. I'll never forget, I had 2 kids that were nonverbal. I even though I was a special ed teacher, I taught very academic-minded kids for the most part. 2 kids in my classroom are nonverbal. Their IEPs call for a 1-to-1, each needing 1-to-1 at all times.
Yeah.
2 kids that are pretty high achieving that are in there that, you know, they need to be pushed academically. Another kid who is a bolter who just bolts. And then another kid. And we didn't have the staff to give these kids 1-to-1s. They weren't giving us the staff. I'm like,
it's against the law.
Yeah, exactly. I was telling them that it's against, like, from day one.
Yeah.
And the admin didn't like me because from day one, I'm saying we are not compliant with their
IEP,
their
right?
IEPs.
Yeah.
So that's going on. We don't have the staff, so it's like we're not for these people that are 1-to-1. Then we can't get these kids like to the mainstream classes, the more studious ones, because they're supposed to have a support there in the mainstream classes. But if we send the support, there's like nobody here in this classroom with the kids. It was a really dangerous situation to begin with that I was letting admin know. But we had done an analysis drill, all this, but sometime later, one of my students was really struggling, and he is kind of getting dysregulated. And then he says to me point blank, he's really upset. He's like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to get a gun.
Oh, jeez.
And so immediately alarm bells are going. He says this to me. I call my boss. I call, my boss's response, because we were housed in a suburban school, but we were part of a different.
Yeah.
So call my boss immediately. She, number one, is like, don't tell the principal of the school that we're in. And I'm like, why would we not? This is in his school. But that's what she wants. It takes her forever to come over. We're trying to get in touch with the kids' parents. We're trying to, we do tell the school district. We do tell. I just said, no, we're telling the principal. We tell the principal, resource officer, all that stuff. So the admin comes in, and she is like, talks with the kid, his parents come, whatever, and then he's just going to get sent home. And I'm like, hey, every school I've worked in before, there's safety plans, there are protocols, there's everything. I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is this? And she's like, oh, he's going to go home with his parents. They say that he's safe. And his safety plan is he's going to write up something. And I'm like, whoa. Number one, they say they don't have any guns. Like, number one, just because they say something doesn't mean
it's
anything.
true.
Awful lot of kids get guns from their parents.
Yeah.
Like, 2, there needs to be a serious safety protocol in place. Luckily, the principal of the school I was in, the actual school, was like, he can't be back in our population until he gets an eval.
Yeah.
So, okay, he needs an eval. My wife runs a private practice now. She's trauma work, clinical social worker. Like, I'm talking to her too. Like, what does this kid need? She's like, yeah, he definitely needs an eval. The admin, my boss, is supposed to be setting all it, and she's just like, oh, I'm going on vacation tomorrow. I'm like, so every day for weeks, I'm just sitting with this kid. I'm supposed to be the teacher, but because he keeps getting brought into school and he's not allowed to go into the general pop of the school, and I'm laughing because it was terrifying to me.
Yes, I am too.
It was fucking terrifying. Like, this kid, they said that this kid,
the kid can't go to Gen Pop, but he's gonna hang with you.
He's gonna bring a gun. And
we're only making it worse.
He's just getting sent. And yes, exactly. He's spiraling every day because he's so embarrassed, freaked out that he said that, and then he's not getting the eval. The collaborative that I'm teaching for is supposed to be setting up this eval, finding someone that can do it, getting him screened, basically. And they're not doing it. And the kid's mom is understandably freaking out and is, calling me. And I'm just like, I don't know. This is what they're saying. And yes, he needs to be evaled, and to be screened safety-wise. And they're not doing it. And I am every day emailing and calling my boss, who's the assistant program director, this is not safe. We're not, I don't feel safe. I'm in here every day. And they fired me because your
So
first
let it
your
go.
first 90.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's because your first 90 days.
Okay.
Even though I was part of the union, your first 90 days at a new school, even when you're union, at least this was back 2019. Yeah, 2019. I don't know if it's changed since then, but your first 90 days, your district can let you go without cause for any reason. They don't need cause, and so they just, because I kept being like, so this kid is not being eval'd, he's in my classroom, and then he keeps spiraling, and once again he will say gun because he knows he's not supposed to, so he keeps
tough.
saying it. And
So I've never experienced.
it was horrifying, and then luckily I went from there to the best teaching setting I've ever had.
Okay.
I got an amazing job, loved it, and then COVID came, and then everything was changed forever. But, luckily my last experience teaching wasn't this horrible situation that was terrifying.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing situation after that. But it was terrifying, and it was, to me, like, admin makes a big difference, and I saw it.
They definitely do. I felt very supported. The principal that hired me in Lexington, she took me out of the line. It was like Winchester or somewhere else. She took me out of the line to come talk to me. And if I ever needed anything, I could go to her. She's definitely a person I still keep in touch with. She's since retired from my district. My principal now, similarly, where if you ask for something and you're clear about it, like, hey, I need this. I felt supported with that. And I don't know if it's I think it's got to be like a cultural thing within a district. I think in teaching.
Yeah.
I also think you have to have like a lot of support. I know it's tough. I know it's very tough because you can have admin that really wants to do it and their hands could be tied. Mm-hmm. Right. There could be the school committee. Right. The school committee could also be really pushing the district in a certain direction. But a lot of times when they're on the same page, there's a lot that can be done. I wouldn't say my district is perfect. I'd say I've enjoyed it very well. I've found a lot of success there, and I think a lot of other people have too. I really enjoy it. I know if I sent anyone an email, I know I could get a meeting. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot to that. I feel like if I asked them something, I feel like they'd consider it. And I don't think that that's the case everywhere. The superintendent was just in my classroom this summer, like reading to students. And I was like, hey, thanks for coming. Hey, you're coming to my classroom too, right? Oh, yeah. And that's not lip service. That's actually, she's really going to do it. She's constantly asking, like, she will ask me a detailed question about my class. like things that we've actually done, because she's come in. And I'm like, oh, like you remembered this. Like, you seem invested. So it is nice to have that. And I know that that's not everywhere.
Well, Chris, I really appreciate you coming and taking time with us. We went way over with the time that I had told you, but it was an awesome conversation. So, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, and love to come back, man.
That'd be
Appreciate
awesome.
you coming in, man. Thank you.